Welcome to the Investor's Archive.
What if I told you that the man everyone calls the greatest investor alive made one of the worst bets of his life at the height of his career, when he should have known better? Yes, I'm talking about Warren Buffett. In 1965, he bought a struggling textile mill in New England. The machines were old, the industry was dying, and most people looked at it and walked away. Buffett didn't, because on paper, it looked cheap. It turned out to be one of the costliest mistakes of his career. He'd later admit he bought it for the wrong reason entirely, not because it was a good business, just because it was cheap. And here's the part worth sitting with. Even the greatest investor of all time got it wrong, badly, at a point in his career when he already knew better. He didn't hide it, he talked about it for decades, because being right every time was never the goal. The goal was learning fast enough that one bad bet didn't define the next 60 years. He later turned it into the company whose name you've probably heard before. He kept the name, rebuilt everything else around it, and today, that mistake is worth over $1 trillion. That company is Berkshire Hathaway. 60 years running, one of the biggest companies on earth. And the wild part? He never had some secret formula nobody else had access to. He wrote his thinking down every single year, in plain language, for anyone willing to read it. Here's how he actually thinks. He never saw himself as buying a stock. He saw himself as buying a piece of a real business. Most people buy a stock hoping the price goes up next week. Buffett asks a completely different question. If I own this whole company forever, would it be a good business? Is it run by people I trust? Can I explain what it actually does in one simple sentence? If you can't, you probably shouldn't own it. In 1972, he bought a candy company called C's Candies. Not because candy was exciting, it was a boring, simple business. But he could explain exactly why people would keep paying more for it every single year. They weren't just buying chocolate, they were buying a gift box with a name they trusted. That's the whole philosophy in one purchase. A business so simple to understand, he could explain why it would keep winning decades in advance. But knowing what you don't understand mattered just as much. For decades, Buffett avoided tech companies almost completely, not because tech was bad, but because he couldn't confidently predict which tech company would still be winning 20 years later. He called this staying inside his circle of competence. He and his business partner literally kept a pile on their desk labeled "too hard." If something didn't fit what they truly understood, it went in the pile, no matter how exciting it looked. Then, in 2016, something unusual happened. Buffett started buying Apple stock. Not because he suddenly understood iPhones. He spent years studying it first and realized Apple wasn't really a tech company to him. It was a business people were addicted to, the way they're addicted to their favorite brand of shoes. That single purchase became one of the most profitable trades of his entire career. The circle didn't move because of hype. It moved because he actually did the work first. Now, here's the one that changes everything. Price and value are not the same thing. A business has a real worth based on how much money it can actually make over time. But the stock market, day to day, has almost nothing to do with that number. It's driven by panic, hype, and headlines. Buffett's mentor used to describe the market as a moody business partner who shows up every day offering to buy or sell you his share of a company, sometimes at a great price, sometimes in a total panic. You're never forced to make a deal with him. You just wait for the days he's panicking and buy when it's cheap. And Buffett wanted more than just cheap. He wanted businesses that were hard to attack. He called this a moat, the same water that protects a castle. Sometimes that's a brand so strong, the product and the company become the same word. Think how people just say Coke for any cola. Sometimes it's a company so big it can charge less than anyone else and still profit. Buffett held businesses like Coca-Cola and Apple for decades because they weren't just good, they were protected. But being right wasn't really the point. It was never about being the smartest person in the room. Buffett's real edge was temperament. His whole philosophy comes down to one line: be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. Simple to say, brutally hard to actually do, because it means staying calm while everyone around you is panicking, and doing nothing while everyone else is doing something. In 2008, When the entire financial system was collapsing and investors everywhere were dumping stocks in a panic, Buffett did the opposite. He wrote a public op-ed with a headline that said exactly what he was doing. Buy American. I am. And then he actually did it, putting billions into the market while everyone else was running for the exit. That single decision, made while the whole world was afraid, ended up making Berkshire billions when the market recovered. And he wasn't afraid to admit when he was wrong. His letters, year after year, openly talk about his mistakes, not just his wins. His lesson wasn't never mess up. It was you don't need to be right often. You just need to avoid the big, catastrophic wrong and let your winners run long enough to make up for everything else. Which brings us to the thing most people get wrong: time. Buffett's holding period, by his own words, is forever. Not because he never sells, but because his entire approach depends on giving a great business the years it needs to actually grow. Sell too early, and you cut off exactly the part that made it worth buying in the first place. Warren Buffett didn't beat the market with some secret. He beat it by treating every dollar like ownership in a real business, staying inside what he actually understood, waiting for a price that gave him room to be wrong, and then having the patience to let time do the rest. 60 years later, he handed all of it written out in his own words for anyone to go read to the next generation running Berkshire Hathaway. So next time you're watching a stock price bounce around and feel the panic creeping in, ask yourself one thing. Are you actually thinking about the business behind it, or just staring at the number? Next episode, we go back even further to the man who taught Buffett all of this in the first place, Benjamin Graham. If this was useful, the next one's coming soon. See you there.